If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we are going to go through everything you need to know in order to create your own playable demon in Demon the Fallen, or Damned, as they would prefer to use. Before we properly sink our teeth into tonight's episode, I wish to tell you what you need in order to follow along with me to make your first Fallen in Demon the Fallen. First and foremost, you will need a copy of the Demon the Fallen core book, either as a physical or a PDF copy, if you are a weirdo or allergic to books or something. If you are playing the game old school with the archaic devices known as pen and paper, you may have a friend or two who is willing to lend you their copy, but as more and more thralls are seeking the likes of Discord and Roll20 to play, it is highly unlikely someone will just lend you a book from afar. Once you have the core book and any other books you want, you will need a character sheet. Drive-Thru RPG doesn't easily provide PDF copies, so you'll have to look elsewhere to find an interactive PDF character sheet. For this episode, I will be using the mrgom.rocksolidshells.com interactive sheet, but there are others available should you wish to use a different format. With that preparation shenanigans biting the dust, one can now begin to create their character. There is no system or dice roll to be made when determining your character's stats, unless you really want to, of course. Demon the Fallen has you assume the role of the fallen angels that went against the will of the Christian God, Big G, granting the human will a will, i.e. an evolving consciousness. Following a 1,000-year war, the damned were cast into the abyss for all of eternity. Following a great maelstrom, a horrific underworld storm of Herculean proportions made the veil between our world and the underworld a little weaker, allowing some demons to escape and possess mortals with the lack of will to carry on their work or find a newer purpose, in spite of Big G. Your memories blur and mingle with that of your host, so you don't need a super nerd concerning the lore to get stuck in. Whatever the purpose, there are already plenty of questions you could start asking yourself. What drew your character in? What are they looking for? What are the answers they are hoping to get? And what would stop them from investigating any more? How does your character explain their supernatural experiences? Through faith, spirituality, or science? Chances are it is not their entire life. The mortals probably had a job, friends, family, and hobbies outside of the supernatural. What sort of person were they in life? What do they do? And how do they go about doing it? These questions can answer some of the boxes at the top of the character sheet. Name is your character's name, for which your demon has 3, their celestial name, their true name, and their mortal name. For the purposes of this tutorial, we will focus on the mortal name. Player is your name, so write that down. Chronicle is the name of the story or one-shot you'll be playing. And finally, we have Concept, which is a short phrase or sentence that defines your character, like terrible artisan, grumpy schoolteacher, or petulant emerald mine owner. If you have done these things correctly, you should have 5 boxes left. Nature and demeanor are very similar in question, but are very different in how one would use them, for they define you and your character and how they interact with the world. Demeanor is how you choose to present your character to the world, whilst nature is how they truly are. To use an extremely crass example, you may seem like the nicest person in the world in the public eye, but deep down, you are a deranged psychopath who eats babies for breakfast, without the smallest amount of remorse. Both nature and demeanor splinter off into many archetypes, each one providing different ways for players to regain willpower, a finite resource a player may use in a tricky situation. There are lots to choose from, so I'll let you discover those for yourself. Finally, there is House, Faction, and Visage, which are the demon-specific boxes. A house is not like your vampire clan or werewolf tribe. It is bigger and more profound, fulfilling the holes of God's agonizing loneliness. The House of a Fallen determines the previous role in heaven before siding with Lucifer's rebellion and connection with specific laws, which are the demon powers. There are 7 of these houses, or Sabatu, which are the Namaru, the first house, otherwise known as devils, who were once the flag bearers of God and bringer of his world. The Asher Buderu, the second house, are the Scourges, who once watched over humanity like their own children. The Anunnaki, the third house, the Malefactors, created the world and the tools for those upon it to use. The Nibiru, the fourth house, are the Fiends who set the universe running like clockwork and could read its movements like no other. The Lamassu, the fifth house, whose job was to inspire humanity to the heights of pure truth. It would not surprise you that they are known as Defilers. The Rabasu, the sixth house, or the Devourers, were created and oversaw the plants and animals that were to serve under the humans. Finally, the Halaku, the seventh house, who destroyed when it was created by the other houses, was out of time and use. Their alternate name are Slayers. Since the return to Earth, the Damned adopted different motives in spite of the human lord. To provide further direction, they created new divisions and purposes to dedicate themselves to in the modern era. These take the form of factions, and there are 5 of them in total, and they are the Faustians, who seek to enslave and use humanity to overthrow heaven. The Cryptics, who want to unravel the puzzles to the motives of God and possibly to existence itself. The Luciferians, who look for the missing Lucifer and hope he will again lead them in the war against heaven. The Raveners, who want to end existence in the most violent manner possible. Reconcilers are the ones who hope to be forgiven, rejoin heaven, and restore Earth to where it was before the fall had happened. The final box is Visage, which is also known as the Apocalyptic forms. Visages represent the enhanced versions of the fallen and serve as reflections or shadows of their true nature and objectives in creation. Demons can take on their visage for as long as they possess at least one point of faith, although this becomes more difficult if they are around non-believing humans. Each house has 3 different ones to choose from at character creation, which you can probably explore at your own leisure. But that's a rather lot to process straight away, isn't it? Well, as for my example character, Austin Redding was born into a musical household. All the time, his parents would play records, then tapes, then CDs. Music was a part of Austin's life, and he wanted in. He would learn to play the piano at a very young age, excelling at classical music like Chopin and Liszt reincarnated. He performed concerts around the country, getting a buzz from the praise and hype. Wanting to be in a spotlight took over the passion he once had for music and did everything he could to maintain that position. Of course, classical music does not really have the glamour as more contemporary musical pursuits, and it began to weigh him down, with his label recommending him to take some time off, as his demeanour began to affect his work, reputation, and, more importantly, the company. He drank and turned his thoughts inward. His mind swarmed with suicidal thoughts, flirting with death. This is where the demon would enter Austin's life, interested by the popularity of this one man through old music. The pact would be sealed, and Austin would return better than ever, practically a new man. To me, Austin is a thrill seeker, not so much for pursuing danger, but wanting that buzz of being famous and money. If anything, he is an attention whore and needs to be noticed, as well as his money. To that end, I would make his demeanour addict. As for nature, it can only be competitor in my mind, that his drive to be the best is keeping him going. He would gain willpower by adhering to his nature, which would mean, in this instance, he would gain willpower whenever he won a competition of some description, a finite resource that has a variety of effects. Then there are the demon-specific boxes. It would make sense to me that Austin was possessed by a devil, the Namaru House, as they are the social butterflies and manipulators. Such a demon would be very interested in using Austin's position as a high-profile celebrity to spin many a deceitful web, and because of his self-centeredness and the cult-like approach to his new demonic powers on humanity, it would make sense that he is of the Faustian faction, using the power of humanity to overthrow God. We will address Visage later in this tutorial. Now that you've established some lore regarding your character, you should have an idea what sort of person they are when you assign points into your attributes. How do they solve their problems? Fighting, thinking, or talking? How do they naturally interact with the world? The attribute section is made up of 3 categories: physical, social, and mental. You start by assigning 1 point in all attributes. You then distribute 7 points in a primary attribute, 5 to a secondary attribute, and 3 dots to a tertiary group. If you decide to put 4 points in a particular attribute, you can choose to assign a specialty to it. Specialties apply a little differently here when compared to other World of Darkness games thereafter. If you get a 10 with a roll that uses the specialty, you re-roll it and add the additional successes. Austin is a pianist focused on his own agenda. He is a liar and borderline conman, forming a cult of his most devoted fans. It is obvious to me that social is the highest attribute, with physical being the second attribute, mainly through his piano work, and then mental. So starting with physical, his strength is 2, his dexterity is 4, with the specialty being delicate movements. Stamina is 2 points. With social, charisma is 3, manipulation is 4, which the specialty here is coercion, and the appearance is 3. And with mental, 1 point in perception, 3 points in intelligence, and 3 points in wits. Dice rolls in Demon the Fallen are usually made up of one attribute plus an ability, as there are many ways of demonstrating feats of strength and intelligence unless you're wanting to deadlift the sins of the World of Darkness, for example, as that would be by pure strength in my imagination at least. The abilities are divided up into, from left to right, talents, skills, and knowledges. Similarly to the attributes, abilities are prioritized in primary, secondary, and tertiary groups, with no ability getting more than 3 points at this point. That said, any dots that are 4 or higher later down the line can have a specialty assigned to it. The primary group gets 13 points, 1-3, the secondary group gets 9 points, and the tertiary group gets 5 points. Austin has to keep appearances. He is not a fighter with his fists, but with a mercury tongue. He is also a performer, not just at the keyboard, but doing press talks, interviews, and anything else that focuses on him and his ego, as well as inducting more into the cult of Austin. Talents will be the primary ability, then skills, then knowledges. Starting with talents, alertness has 2, awareness has 1, empathy has 2, expression has 3, leadership has 2, and subterfuge has 3. With skills, drive and etiquette have 3 points, and performance also has 3 points. And with knowledges, academics, finance, investigation, occult, and religion all have 1 dot. Next is the advantages section, which is where the character creation process truly becomes unique. On the top left pane, there is backgrounds, for which you have 5 points to spend. These should support the character concepts and add history and context to their existence. Under most circumstances, your storyteller should tell you which backgrounds are appropriate and which are not, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we will assume we can do as we please. As for Austin's backgrounds, he has 4 dots in influence, and I've put 2 dots in fame, which is 1 more than needed because apparently I'm a fucking idiot. On the far right side of the background pane is virtues, which define the moral center of the demon character. Conscience is a measure of the character's morality, whilst conviction is the strength of the character's beliefs. Courage is the ability of the character to act on their beliefs, overcoming obstacles they may spend on their path. You start out with 1 dot in each and distribute 3 more however you please. You can use freebie points to increase them further later, if you wish. Your willpower equals the highest 2 of the virtues added together. For the case of Austin, he has a total of 3 conviction and 2 courage, meaning he has a total of 5 willpower. To the right of background and in the center of the advantage panel, we have law, which are our demonic powers. Each house has 3 laws of their own. All demons can also access 2 common laws, the law of fundament and law of humanity, giving you 5 to choose to distribute your 3 points. However, 1 must go into your house laws, leaving you 2 to distribute how you please. Your primary law also mirrors the visage at the top right of the character sheet. Each visage provides special traits when you have either high or low torment, which basically means whether you look angelic or demonic. There are 8 traits or special powers in total, but only 4 are accessible when you have a torment of 6 or less. The remaining 4 manifest when your character becomes more demonic. When you reach 7, you may select one of the 4 high torment powers and add that to the apocalyptic form. When it reaches 8, you add another, and so on and so forth. Each visage can be found. It should be noted that each demon starts with different torment levels. Going back to the character creation for an example, Austin is a devil. He receives the law of Celestial, law of the Flame, and law of Radiance, as well as the common ones, laws of Fundament and law of Humanity. At this point, I would put all my 2 points into the law of Humanity and 1 in law of Radiance, and because this is the most prominent of the house laws, this is what I put in my visage at the top right of the character sheet. Visage of Radiance. As a demon belonging to the Devil's House, Austin starts with 4 Torment, giving him the low Torment abilities Wings, Inhumane Allure, Radiating Aura, and Sense the Hidden. We have almost finished creating our first Demon the Fallen character. Now we just need to tidy up some things and add up our freebie points. Demon characters start with 3 points of faith, a resource used for many different things from power usage to forming pacts with mortals and so forth. Once you have done that, you can spend your 15 freebie points however you please. Each trait has its own expenditure. Background and willpower costs 1 point. Virtue and ability costs 2 points. Attribute costs 5 points, faith costs 6 points, and law, regardless of house, costs 7 points. This number changes when you spend experience after each session. New abilities cost 3 points. New law from your own house costs 7 points. New law from a house that is not of your own house costs 10 points. Attribute costs the current rating times 4, the ability costs the current rating times 2. Increasing a law you currently possess is the current rating times 5. To increase a background, it costs the current rating times 3. To increase a virtue, it costs the current rating times 2, which does not increase the willpower after character creation. That is done by spending the current rating in experience points. Increasing your faith costs the current rating times 7, and to decrease your torment, that costs 10 points. So let's round up this character creation process by talking about Austin's freebie points. 1 point went into Brawl, 1 point went into Melee, and 1 into Performance. As that's now 4 dots, I put a specialty of Piano in it. Most of these dots went into backgrounds. The Feign background now has 3 dots, yes I did it wrong but shush, don't tell anyone. Contacts has 3 dots, and Followers has 5 dots, which means we have now rounded up the whole process with our example character, and once you have finished adding the freebie points, you can finally say that you have made your first Demon the Fallen character. Yes, the book has all that you need to understand the character creation process, but I have found that it sometimes helps to have someone walk you through the process, rather than nag your storyteller 100 times. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.